Welcome, beautiful souls, to the Pain to Power podcast, where we talk all things healing, growth, and turning pain into power. I'm your host, Jill Ripley, and today we're diving into a topic that every single one of us faces at some point: conflict. Conflict can show up in our marriages, friendships, families, work environments, or even within ourselves. And I want to be completely honest. This is an area where I still struggle. When I feel like someone isn't allowing me to express my point of view, my ego steps in. I feel hurt, dismissed, and unseen. Maybe you can relate. So, in today's episode, we're going to explore why conflict triggers us so deeply, how the ego plays a role, and most importantly, how we can begin to shift from reaction to resolution, from division to understanding, and from pain to power. Conflict isn't just about the disagreement on the surface. It's about what that disagreement touches inside of us. When someone shuts us down, interrupts, or refuses to hear us, it pokes at some very old wounds. Maybe times in childhood when our voices weren't valued, or experiences where we learned that speaking up led to punishment or rejection. So when I'm in conflict and someone won't hear me out, my ego wants to shout, "See me, hear me, acknowledge that my perspective matters." But here's the truth. Often, the other person's ego is doing the exact same thing. Two wounded egos, both grasping for validation, both desperate to be seen, both unwilling to soften first. That's why conflict can feel so overwhelming. Because it's not just about this moment, it's about every moment we've ever felt unheard. The ego isn't evil. It's simply the part of us that wants to protect our identity, our sense of self. When someone disagrees with us or refuses to listen, the ego feels threatened. It interprets disagreement as danger. If you don't hear me, maybe I don't matter. If you don't agree with me, maybe I'm not enough. So the ego rushes to defend. It raises its voice, it rehearses comebacks, it withdraws and shuts down. But here's where we reclaim our power. By recognizing that the ego isn't the deepest truth of who we are. Our soul doesn't need to win an argument to know its worth. Our soul doesn't need constant agreement to feel secure. I often struggle with this, but when I remember that I can breathe, I can notice the ego's flare up without letting it run the show. When we peel back the layers, what we really want isn't to be right. We want to be understood. We want connection. We want to be seen, and we want to be heard. Even in the heat of an argument, most of us aren't asking, "Agree with me or else." What we're really saying is, "Please see me. Please understand where I'm coming from. Please don't dismiss my feelings." That's a vulnerable need, and it often gets disguised as defensiveness or anger. Imagine how different conflict would feel if instead of clinging to the ego's need to be right, we could gently say, "What I want most is to feel understood." Pause before reacting. When emotions arise, the nervous system goes into fight or flight. The best gift we can give ourselves is space. That might mean pausing to breathe, excusing ourselves to step outside, or even saying, "I need a moment before I respond." Listen to understand, not to reply. Most of us think we're listening, but really we're waiting for our turn to jump in. We're rehearsing our response in our heads building our defense, or silently poking holes in what the other person is saying. The problem with that kind of listening is that the other person feels it. They can sense when our energy is closed, when we're just waiting to fire back. And that only makes conflict worse. True listening requires presence. It's the willingness to pause your inner dialogue and set aside the need to be right, so you can actually hear what's being said. It's almost like emptying your cup so there's room for their perspective to pour in. That doesn't mean you agree. It means you're choosing to understand before you respond. And often, once the other person feels heard, they naturally soften and are more open to hearing you as well. A practical phrase to use is, "Can you help me understand why this matters so much to you?" That simple question does two powerful things. It shows genuine curiosity, and it invites depth instead of defensiveness. Listening this way turns conflict from a tug-of-war into a dialogue. Instead of pulling against each other, you're exploring together. Use I statements. When we're hurt or frustrated, it's easy to fall into blame. You always, or you never. Those words put the other person on the defensive instantly. And once our defenses are up, real resolution is almost impossible. I statements shift the energy. They take responsibility for your own feelings instead of attacking the other person's character. For example, instead of "you never listen to me," try "I feel hurt when I don't get the chance to share my perspective." The difference is huge. The first statement makes the other person wrong. The second reveals your vulnerability, and vulnerability opens the door to connection. You can also expand I statements to include your need. "I feel anxious when plans change last minute. What helps me is having a little time to adjust. I feel unappreciated when my efforts go unnoticed. I'd love to know they matter to you." Notice how this is still honest, still direct, but it doesn't attack. It gives the other person a clear picture of your inner world and a pathway towards repair. I statements are not about watering down your truth. They're about sharing it in a way that invites dialogue rather than war. Validate before you disagree. Validation doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't require you to change your mind, abandon your values, or pretend you see things the same way. What it does mean is this: I recognize your inner experience, and I'm willing to hold space for it. Think about the last time you felt deeply upset. What you probably wanted most wasn't for someone to swoop in with solutions or to argue you out of your feelings. You wanted to feel seen. Validation gives that gift. It might sound like, "I can see this is really important to you, even if I see it differently." Or, "I hear that you're frustrated, and I want to understand more." It makes sense you'd feel hurt after what happened. Notice that none of these statements require agreement. You're not conceding the argument, you're simply acknowledging that another human being is having a real emotional response. And that matters. Validation creates safety. And when people feel safe, they're more likely to soften, to listen in return, and to move towards resolution. Without it, defenses stay high and conflict escalates. Choose connection over winning. Staying connected doesn't mean giving up your values or silencing your truth. It means choosing to express your perspective in a way that invites understanding instead of fueling division. You can still stand firmly in what you believe while softening the delivery. It's the difference between saying, "You're wrong and here's why," versus saying, "This is how I see it, and I'd love for you to understand where I'm coming from." One approach pushes the other person away, while the other keeps the door open. Softening isn't weakness, it's strength. It means you're confident enough in your truth that you don't have to shout it or force it. You're able to stand in it calmly, lovingly, and with respect for the other person's humanity. From a spiritual perspective, every conflict is an invitation. It asks us, can you love even when it's hard? Can you soften even when your ego wants to harden? Can you hold space for someone else's truth without abandoning your own? When I shift my perspective, conflict becomes less of a battlefield and more of a classroom. Each argument is a chance to practice patience, humility, and compassion. And sometimes the lesson isn't about fixing the relationship, it's about seeing what inside of me still needs healing. If I feel invisible in conflict, maybe it's calling me to affirm my own worth, so I no longer need others to validate it. Recently, I was in a small group conversation where we were reflecting on some of the bigger conflicts happening in the world. The discussion turned to the idea of love, what it really means and how it shows up in situations where people hurt one another. I shared from my heart that when people cause harm, I see it as a distortion of love that's been twisted or blocked by pain, fear, or conditioning. Another person in the group felt strongly that everything is love, even the hurtful expressions of it. When I tried to articulate my perspective, I was cut off before I could finish my thought. In that moment, I felt small. I felt dismissed and insignificant. My ego flared up immediately. In my head, I was thinking, why won't you let me finish? Why don't my words matter here? Instead of finding a healthy way to express this, I shut down. It took me a while to reconnect with the conversation. Even though I eventually did, I left feeling less than and hurt. And here's where the lesson came in. I realized afterwards that what I wanted most in that moment wasn't to be right. I wanted to feel heard. I wanted space to express what was alive in me, even if no one agreed with it. That experience reminded me just how easy it is in conflict, whether it's with strangers, friends, or loved ones, to slip into defending our own point of view so strongly that we forget the heart on the other side. It also reminded me of my own responsibility to notice when my ego feels bruised and to choose how I respond. I'd like to guide you through a short reflection. If it's safe, close your eyes. Think of a recent conflict. Notice what triggered you. Did you feel dismissed? Did you feel unheard or unseen? Now ask yourself, what did my ego want in that moment? What did my heart actually need? Take a deep breath. Imagine yourself offering compassion to the part of you that felt unheard. Whisper, I see you. I hear you. You matter. Notice how it feels to give yourself what you longed for from another. That's where peace begins within. Conflict doesn't have to destroy relationships. In fact, when handled with compassion, it can deepen them. Each time we practice humility, each time we choose listening over arguing, each time we soften our ego and open our heart, we grow. It's not about perfection. I still stumble. I still get defensive. I still feel hurt when I'm shut down. But I keep practicing, and each practice plants a seed of peace, both in me and the world around me. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Remember, conflict doesn't have to be something we fear. With awareness, compassion, and the willingness to look beyond the ego, conflict can actually become one of our greatest teachers. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Empowered by the Storm, or visit my website at empoweredbythestorm.com for more resources on healing, growth, and turning pain into power. Until next time, may you find peace in the places that once brought you conflict, and may you continue turning your pain into power.